First, are they pretty nice about it?
It didn't take Jeffrey long to realize that just like the wild animals he has studied and written about, farm animals also possess individual personalities and all the emotions that go with it. Jeffrey is a former psychoanalyst, not a scientist, and as such, he has often been accused of ascribing human characteristics to non-human animals. They even have a fancy term for it. It's called anthropomorphism. Yet there are scientists who can expand their thoughts well beyond conventional wisdom, and in doing so, see the bigger picture that is starting to come into focus. One of these is Marc Bekoff, professor of biology at the University of Colorado, and one of the world's leading authorities on animal emotions.
And anthropomorphic, I call it one of the A words. It's kind of a dirty word. But there's no way that I could communicate what I'm learning and seeing and studying in an animal without being anthropomorphic. Anthropomorphism is attributing human characteristics to non-human beings. If I tell you that the cow in the pasture was sad, was lamenting her place, I'm not saying that she's sad in the same way I'm sad, but all I had to do was look at her posture to know she was kind of sulked down, kind of just looked lethargic. I can't think of any other way to communicate that. I could tell you about her dopamine and serotonin, and I could tell you about the muscle tone in her legs and her muscles and tendons, but that doesn't capture my telling you she was either happy or sad. So I think we need to be anthropomorphic, simply taking into account the world of the animal, but using human terms to describe their behavior.
When I was growing up and being trained as an ethologist, one of the key lessons to learn was not to anthropomorphize, not to give animals qualities that we've reserved for humans.
Lesley Rogers is a professor of neuroscience and animal behavior at Australia's University of New England.
But that's changed. I mean, basically it's changed since the 80s. So it's now becoming more and more acceptable for people who study animal behaviour to at least be looking at these as possibilities and studying them. Whereas, say, 20 to 30 years ago, this would not have been considered acceptable research. I can say now that it is acceptable research. The issue of emotion and thinking in animals is now seen as something that you can study scientifically. I mean, it's not without its problems. It's quite a complex thing to put one's mind to. So certainly not all the answers are there before us, but they are seen as problems that are worthwhile approaching using the scientific method. If we just look at the cognitive abilities of even a chick in the first few days of life, they form very good memories, they learn fantastically, they have individual characteristics that they can recognise one individual chick from another. They form representations, they can recognise objects that were hidden behind other things. Very complex cognitive abilities that we've seen even as being unique to humans are now being shown in the young domestic chick.
A couple of 100 miles north of Animal Place, over the rolling hills of Orland, California, lies Farm Sanctuary, which, coupled with its main facility in Watkins Glen, New York, is one of the largest farm animal sanctuaries in the world. Sanctuaries represent one of the few places where farm animals can really be themselves, without the stress of the factory farming ordeal, and as such, are the perfect environment for Jeffrey to study their true emotions. Diane Miller is the West Coast manager of this 600-acre haven for once abused farm animals that can now look forward to a life of peace, security, and lots of tender, loving care.
Diane, I have to tell you that this is the first time I've ever felt I was becoming intimate with a chicken, that I've held one this close to my
I'm sorry you've been deprived.
chest. Well, clearly I've been deprived. I didn't realize that these animals could become so interested in us, so close to us. Is that fairly common? Can you have an intimate, close relationship with a chicken or a
Certainly
turkey?
Can. I have several good friends who are chickens, who listen to me much better than my people friends do sometimes.
And don't answer back, or sometimes they do.
Sometimes they do, you know, but they're very good listeners.
And clearly it's not just a one-sided relationship, right? I mean, she's deriving pleasure from this, and I'm getting pleasure from it.
I'd say she's enjoying that immensely. She certainly has all the same potential that a person has for intimacy and affection and caring and bonds between certain individuals.
How unusual when you think about it. And after all, we don't have a history of having behaved very kindly toward these animals, do we?
That's absolutely right.
This beautiful, beautiful turkey here looks like a rainbow of colors. I've never touched this before. It feels so wonderful. I never knew that their emotions are actually reflected on, what do you call this part of their face?
The long dangly here is called their snood.
Apparently it registers all his emotions?
Right. The head skin and neck and the snood on a tom turkey is really a barometer of their emotions. It's how they communicate with one another. And what happens is when a tom is feeling really good and he's strutting and he's happy and life is good, he's feeling good, he'll be deep red colored. And they have the capacity to change the color, their whole skin tone, all of their head and their neck and their snood, from totally white or light blue like you see around his eyes. So they can go from light blue or white to all the way deep red. And when they're happy and they're strutting and life is good, they're deep magenta red. So that's how they communicate with one another.
And then they can do that immediately?
Right.
Like in
Within a few seconds.
Within a few seconds.
Turkeys are the only farm animals bred from North American wildlife. Benjamin Franklin considered the turkey a noble bird and often wrote of its worthiness to be considered America's national emblem. Had his efforts been successful, one can only wonder if that honor might have changed the way we treat them today.